Our second piece is Chopin's Prelude No. 16. It's originally in B flat minor on the piano, but in order to be able to fit all of those notes onto our guitar neck, a standard 6-string, I've tuned the bottom string down to D, giving us D and then 4 octaves up to the 22nd fret, just to make it accessible for everyone. You don't need 24 frets to play this piece. And I've also had to modulate the piece from B flat down a minor third into G minor instead. So there's those alterations to help us perform it on guitar. It's a very technically demanding piece, full of long legato and tapping runs and some alternate picking on the lower strings as well towards the end. Break it down into chunks, practice each one separately, and really try with the legato to avoid pick attack to get it flowing as well as possible, avoiding especially when the pick strokes are falling offbeat. We want to keep it as flowing and as legato throughout as possible. As you practice it, it can be really helpful to try and understand how the piece is put together. And like so many of the pieces in this book, we're spelling out chord progressions in interesting and melodically inventive ways. So keep a lookout for arpeggio shapes that you might know, and look at how they've been decorated and embellished. For example 2A, I'm looking at a way that this might be done, and it's familiar to rock guitarists as well. Players like Randy Rhoads, Ritchie Blackmore, and gypsy guitarist Django Reinhardt, etc. have all used these kind of approaches. So I'll start by demonstrating a simple D major arpeggio, a shape that if you're into your sweep picking you'll probably recognise, and then I'm going to embellish it first with lower chromatic approach notes, so taking the arpeggio notes and then going to each of those notes from 1 fret below. And then the alternative, the upper chromatic approach note, going down onto each note from 1 fret above. And we'll do that for the whole 2-octave shape. This is most explicitly used in the very end of the piece, where we have a long run going all the way from the open low D up to the top D before hitting the final 2 chords. But it's used throughout the piece in other, perhaps more disguised ways. So keep a lookout as you work through the piece. One of the benefits of doing this kind of analysis and interpretation of the piece, rather than just learning the notes one after another verbatim, is that we can then take those ideas away into our own playing and get a really authentic, in this case, get a really authentic neoclassical flavour to our playing, having gone right back to the source to get our vocabulary. Here's a short neoclassical style rock lick that you can apply in a D Phrygian dominant G harmonic minor context, outlining D major, C minor, and ending on a D, which could resolve either to G minor or D. Tone-wise for this piece, I'm going pretty high gain with a little bit of delay to get as much compression and sustain as possible to really support some of those high tapping notes and get them to pop out properly. To that end, the chords at the start and the end are going to sound pretty mushy and muddy if we just leave it as it is. So I'm going to roll the volume off to play those intro chords and then bring it back up to go into the rest of the piece. And then off we go. Same at the end of the piece. I'm going to, and if you've got time, roll the volume off to get onto those last two chords. Lastly, I wanted to isolate some of the legato sections about a third or halfway through the piece, and there's phrases that modulate up, and I tried to keep each iteration of the phrase feeling as similar as possible for the fretting hand and the picking hand. It's going to help make it a lot easier to learn and to get each version of the phrase up to speed. For example, here we are, this is bar 10. And then we repeat that and then go up to a slight variation. Beware, it's not the same notes, even the same position moved up, but it's keeping the two feeling as similar as possible. Another great little tip to help keep these legato phrases as clean and as quiet as possible to avoid handling noise is to mute the higher strings as you return to the lower ones with spare fingers on your picking hand. For example, in bar 10, I'm going to be using the second finger to just mute the B string quietly as I then return hammering back onto the G string. And I'm going to bring both the third finger down on the fretting hand as I mute the B string with the other hand. It's just going to keep things even more secure for you. Here's that whole section. As we then go back to the intro. I just briefly wanted to look at bar 32 in the piece, where we get our first extended alternate picking section. This low part, which on the original piano version is played in unison an octave apart in both hands, seemed a great moment to bring in the picking hand more aggressively, as it really felt like the typical kind of part a rock or metal rhythm guitarist might play anyway. We're spelling out again some arpeggios, but with a lot of chromatic approach notes. And this is a good opportunity to use the dynamics to make it a bit more expressive. I'm starting each bar nice and quiet on the low strings, and as I build up to the highest note in each pitch contour, I'm digging in more and more to build up to a climax.